You are wasting your life. You know it. You feel it. You could be more, do more, achieve more, but instead you're stuck, trapped in distractions, buried under obligations, lost in an endless loop of comfort and regret. You scroll mindlessly, consuming instead of creating, numbing yourself with entertainment while your dreams rot in the back of your mind. You tell yourself you'll change tomorrow, next week, next year, but you never do. You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are at war, and the battlefield is inside you. Your mind has been hijacked by fear, by doubt, by the never-ending cycle of procrastination. You chase meaningless dopamine hits, checking your phone, scrolling through feeds, watching others live their lives while you sit on the sidelines. The worst part? You know you're doing it. You feel the frustration, the anger at yourself, and yet day after day you repeat the cycle. Every hour wasted is an hour you will never get back. Every distraction pulls you further from the life you were meant to live. How many years have you already lost? How many more are you willing to throw away? This is Victory Stoic, where we break the chains, destroy excuses, and take back control. If you're tired of wasting your potential, like, share, and subscribe, and comment below. I declare war on my wasted time. Number 1, why you are always distracted. You sit down to work. 5 minutes later, your phone buzzes. You check it. Just a quick glance. Then another notification. Then a random video. 30 minutes disappear. You tell yourself you'll focus now. But then you remember an email you forgot to send. Then you check the news. Then you open another tab. By the time you snap out of it, half your day is gone. You tell yourself you lack discipline, that you just need to try harder. But deep down, you know the truth. This isn't just bad habits. This is war. The hidden enemy, Ethan, a 45-year-old entrepreneur, always felt like he was running out of time. He had dreams, big ones. He wanted to build something meaningful, leave a legacy. But every time he sat down to work, something got in the way. His phone, his inbox, his need to check the latest headlines. He would start his day with energy, only to end it exhausted, frustrated, and angry at himself for getting nothing done. At first, he blamed himself. I need more willpower, he thought. I just need to push through. But no matter how hard he tried, he kept falling back into distraction. Something deeper was pulling him away. That's when he realized distraction is not the problem. Distraction is the symptom. The real reason you can't focus, you are not weak. You are not lazy. You are avoiding something. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But most people don't realize it. They think their distractions are random. They are not. They are your mind's way of escaping discomfort. Every time you reach for your phone instead of doing meaningful work, your mind is running from something. Fear of failure. If you never fully commit, you never have to face the possibility of falling short. Fear of discomfort. Hard work is painful. Deep thinking is exhausting. Your mind seeks easy dopamine instead. Fear of insignificance. What if everything you're working on doesn't matter? What if no one cares? The thought alone is enough to make you numb yourself with distractions. Your brain is not your enemy. It is just trying to protect you from discomfort. But in doing so, it is robbing you of the very thing that gives life meaning. Deep focus, real progress, and the pursuit of something greater than yourself. Master your mind or be ruled by it. Ethan finally understood that fighting distraction wasn't about forcing himself to focus. It was about removing the emotional escape routes. He started facing his fears instead of avoiding them. Every time he felt the urge to check his phone, he asked himself, "What am I running from?" And more often than not, the answer wasn't boredom, it was fear. He began structuring his day to eliminate unnecessary choices. He deleted apps that hijacked his mind. He set strict time blocks for deep work. He learned to sit with discomfort, to push through the resistance instead of numbing it. And over time, he regained control. Most people will never do this. Most people will live their entire lives distracted, scattered, lost in a loop of instant gratification. But if you are reading this, you have a choice. You can keep lying to yourself, keep making excuses, keep throwing your life away in small, forgettable moments. Or you can wake up. The Stoic truth about focus. The world will never stop trying to steal your attention. Your mind will never stop seeking the easy way out. But you are not a slave to your impulses. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You must become the master. You must train your mind like a warrior sharpens his blade. If you do not take control of your focus, someone else will. So ask yourself, what are you avoiding? What are you afraid to face? Because until you answer that, distraction will own you, and your life will not be your own. Number 2, the resistance is you. Every time you decide to change, an invisible force rises against you. It whispers in your ear like an old friend who doesn't want you to leave town. You're too old for this. You're too busy. You're too tired. It's comforting, isn't it? Like a warm blanket on a cold morning, it wraps around you, convincing you that staying in bed is the better choice. But here's the truth. That voice is lying to you. You think your biggest enemy is the world outside, the system, the economy, your responsibilities. But no, your biggest enemy is the coward inside you, the one who clings to comfort, who prefers a known prison over an unknown freedom. Every time you try to break free, it pulls you back with 100 excuses. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week becomes next year. Before you know it, a decade has vanished, and all you have to show for it are the same recycled regrets. Your mind is a brilliant saboteur. It will disguise fear as logic, whispering that now just isn't the right time. It will remind you of every failure, magnify every weakness, and sedate you with distractions. You will suddenly feel an overwhelming urge to check your emails, reorganize your bookshelf, or research the best way to start. Anything but actually taking the first step. It's not laziness, it's resistance. And resistance is a master manipulator. Marcus Aurelius knew this battle well. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But most people never realize it. They live their whole lives mistaking their own fear for wisdom, their own hesitation for caution. They spend years waiting for the right mood, the right energy, the perfect conditions, never realizing that the waiting itself is what's killing them. Imagine you're in a burning house, but instead of running for the exit, you sit down and debate the best escape strategy. That's how most people live, analyzing, preparing, hesitating, all while the fire of time consumes everything around them. But the reality is, there is no perfect strategy, no perfect moment. The only way out is to move. You can argue with yourself all you want. You can keep feeding the voice that says, "Not today." But here's the brutal truth. The longer you delay, the weaker you become. The resistance inside you grows stronger every time you give in. If you're not careful, it will smother every dream, every ambition, every chance you have at becoming something greater. And one day when the fire has finally turned everything to ash, you'll look back and realize you were never trapped. The door was open the whole time. You just refused to walk through it. Number 3, no bad parts. The battlefield inside you. You think you are one person, but in reality, you are a whole damn committee. A chaotic council of conflicting voices, each pulling you in a different direction. There's the one that craves discipline, the one that craves escape, the one that still carries wounds from decades. Ego. And instead of understanding them, you spend most of your life fighting yourself, wondering why you can't just get it together. Dr. Richard Schwartz calls this the no bad parts theory. The idea that you are not one unified being, but rather a collection of different parts, each with its own motives, fears, and survival strategies. And if you don't understand these parts, you will spend your life either suppressing them or being controlled by them. The addict is the part of you that mindlessly scrolls, binge watches, overeats, procrastinates. It's not evil. It's just trying to protect you from discomfort, from boredom, from pain. The inner dictator is the part that demands perfection, that tells you nothing is ever good enough, that drowns you in self-criticism when you fall short. It believes it's pushing you toward success, but more often, it just drives you toward exhaustion. And then there's the wounded child, the part that still carries every past failure, every rejection, every moment of shame. It is terrified of risk because it remembers what it felt like to fail before. Most people try to silence these voices. They punish the addict, despise the dictator, ignore the wounded child. But suppression doesn't work. You can't beat yourself into greatness. You can't wage war against your own mind and expect to win. The only way forward is acceptance, not surrender, but understanding. Marcus Aurelius once said, "A man cannot find a quiet place if he refuses to quiet his own mind." Your mind is not your enemy. Even the parts that sabotage you are only trying to help. In the wrong way, maybe, but their intentions are not malicious. The addict is trying to protect you from stress. The dictator is trying to push you to be better. The wounded child is trying to keep you safe. When you stop fighting them and start listening, you gain something powerful: control. Ethan, the entrepreneur who struggled with distractions, used to hate himself for procrastinating. He saw it as weakness, as failure. But once he understood why, that part of him was simply afraid of not being good enough, he stopped fighting himself and started working with himself. Instead of forcing willpower, he built systems to minimize temptation. Instead of demanding perfection, he allowed himself small wins. And instead of suppressing his fears, he confronted them directly. Most people never do this. They either let their impulses run their lives or try to crush them with sheer force. Both paths lead to self-destruction. The only real way forward is to integrate every part of yourself into a functioning whole. So ask yourself, which part of you is really in control? And is it leading you toward the life you want or away from it? Until you answer that, you will always be fighting a war within yourself, never realizing that the only enemy was misunderstanding. Number 4, train harder, become stronger. Weakness is not something you are born with. It is something you practice. Every time you choose the easy way out, you reinforce it. Every time you avoid discomfort, you make yourself weaker. Every time you tell yourself, "I'll do it later," you train your mind to give up before the battle even starts. The modern world sells you comfort like a drug. Soft chairs, fast food, instant entertainment, one-click gratification. You are surrounded by things designed to make life easier. But easier does not mean better. Easier means weaker. The more you surround yourself with comfort, the less tolerance you have for discomfort. And soon, even the smallest challenge feels unbearable. The Stoics knew this. They didn't just preach resilience, they practiced it. Seneca would deliberately expose himself to discomfort, living as a poor man even though he was wealthy, eating plain food when he could afford a feast, training his mind to be unshaken by hardship. He did this not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he understood a simple truth. If you do not prepare yourself for difficulty, difficulty will break you. If you want to stop wasting your life, you must seek out challenges, not avoid them. You must deliberately take the harder road, not because you have to, but because it forges you into something stronger. Choose to walk when you could drive. Choose to wake up early when you could sleep in. Choose to embrace discomfort when you could avoid it. Not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself that you are not fragile. Look at the strongest people you know. The ones who command respect, who seem unshaken by hardship. Do you think they got there by taking the easy road? They became who they are because they faced resistance and grew from it. Every time you push against difficulty, you sharpen your willpower. Every time you resist temptation, you train your discipline. Every time you endure, you become someone capable of caring more, leading more, achieving more. Ethan, the entrepreneur, used to shy away from hard things. If a task was frustrating, he'd put it off. If something required discipline, he'd tell himself he wasn't ready. But then he made a simple rule for himself. Whenever he was faced with two choices, he would take the harder one. If he wanted to skip the gym, he went anyway. If he wanted to procrastinate, he forced himself to work for 5 minutes. If something scared him, he did it first. Slowly, his tolerance for discomfort grew, and with it, his ability to push through challenges that once seemed impossible. Marcus Aurelius wrote, The obstacle is the way. Your path to growth is not in avoiding struggle, but in embracing it. Every time you take the easy road, you weaken yourself. Every time you take the hard road, you strengthen yourself. Which one do you want to practice? Because in the end, you will become what you repeatedly do. Number 5, your environment is your destiny. You think willpower is enough, that you can resist temptation, that you can stay focused no matter what's around you. But you're wrong. Your environment will either build you up or tear you down, and no one, not even the strongest minds, can escape its influence. Take Jake, for example, a 43-year-old consultant who had everything mapped out, his goals, his schedule, his plan for self-improvement, but every time he tried to commit, something pulled him back. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't a lack of intelligence. It was the people he surrounded himself with. Jake's friends weren't bad people. They were just comfortable. They liked their routines, their weekend drinks, their endless conversations about someday goals that never materialized. Every time Jake tried to push forward, the group pulled him back like quicksand. Why are you always so serious? Take a break, man. You work too hard. It was subtle but deadly. They weren't stopping him outright. They were simply making mediocrity feel normal. And that's how most people lose, not by one massive failure, but by thousands of small moments where they let their environment lower their standards. The invisible force that shapes you. Marcus Aurelius understood this well. He didn't just wake up disciplined every morning. He surrounded himself with thinkers, philosophers, and soldiers who lived with purpose. Seneca warned that a person's character is shaped not by their intentions, but by the company they keep. The Stoics knew what modern science has now proven. Motivation is weak, but environment is powerful. If you put a distracted man in a room full of focused workers, he will either level up or leave. If you put a strong man in a room full of weak minds, he will either drop his standards or walk away. No one is immune to their surroundings. Engineer an environment that forces growth. Jake eventually made a decision not to cut people out of his life completely, but to control his exposure. He still saw his old friends, but he stopped spending his prime hours around them. Instead, he joined a high-level mastermind group. He started training with disciplined athletes. He worked in an environment where excellence was the norm, not the exception. Within months, his mindset shifted. He didn't have to force motivation anymore because his surroundings demanded it. And you can do the same. Stop relying on self-control and start engineering a world where distractions don't exist. Struggle with social media? Delete apps, use website blockers, or leave your phone in another room. Struggle with discipline? Spend more time around people who live with structure. Join a group, find a mentor, or work in spaces where slacking off is unacceptable. Struggle with commitment? Announce your goals publicly, create external accountability, and put yourself in situations where failure isn't an option. Because at the end of the day, you won't rise to your highest aspirations, you will sink to the level of your environment. So ask yourself, is your world shaping you into who you want to become? Or is it quietly pulling you away from the life you could have had? Number 6, act without motivation. You tell yourself you'll start when you feel ready, when the timing is right, when motivation strikes like a bolt of lightning. But that's the lie that has kept you stuck for years. You wait for the spark, but the spark never comes. Because motivation is an illusion, a mirage that vanishes the moment you try to reach for it. Look at your life. How many times have you told yourself you'll begin tomorrow? How many projects, workouts, ideas, and goals have died in the waiting room of your hesitation? Seneca understood this over 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "We cannot control the wind, but we can adjust our sails." You don't get to decide when you feel ready. You don't get to command motivation to arrive on demand, but you do get to move forward anyway. Think about it. How often have you dreaded going to the gym, only to feel energized once you started? How many times have you postponed a task believing it was too difficult, only to find it wasn't so bad once you got into it? That's because action creates momentum. Discipline comes first. Feeling follows. Your brain doesn't reward you with energy up front. It gives you energy after you start moving. The first step is always the hardest, but once you break inertia, everything gets easier. Take Alex, a 40-year-old writer who dreamed of publishing a book but never got past the first few pages. He told himself he needed inspiration, the perfect environment, the right flow state. But months turned into years and the book remained unwritten. Then he changed one thing. He stopped waiting for motivation and set a rule. Write for 10 minutes every day, no excuses. Even if he felt uninspired, even if his writing was terrible, he showed up. And something happened. His brain stopped resisting. The habit took over. Words started flowing. Some days were good, some weren't. But the book got written. Not because he was inspired, but because he acted despite not feeling inspired. This is how you break free. You stop waiting. You stop negotiating. You stop believing that your feelings have the final say. You move, even if it's messy, even if it's small, even if you don't feel like it. Because the alternative, wasting your life in an endless loop of hesitation, waiting for a perfect moment that will never come. Most people will never do this. They will wait, delay, and postpone their lives into oblivion. But you don't have to be most people. You can either sit around hoping for motivation like a beggar, or you can push forward like a warrior. The choice is yours. But know this, if you don't act now, one day you will look back and wish you had. Number 7, discipline is not punishment. Some people treat discipline like a prison sentence, a rigid, joyless system of rules and restrictions. They wake up at 4 a.m., force themselves through brutal routines, and believe that suffering is the price of success. But that's not discipline. That's self-imposed misery. And if you see discipline as a punishment, you will eventually reject it. True discipline is not about suffering for the sake of suffering. It is about freedom, the ability to take control of your own life instead of being controlled by impulses, distractions, or external forces. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up every day thinking, "I must suffer through another disciplined morning." No, he understood that discipline is a tool, not a cage. He used it to build strength, resilience, and mental clarity, not to destroy his own joy. Take Brian, a 42-year-old executive who decided to fix his life with extreme discipline. He went from an unstructured lifestyle to an ironclad routine: 5 a.m. workouts, a strict diet, no breaks, no socializing, no room for error. And for a while it worked. He felt powerful, in control. But then cracks started to form. He felt burnout. He started resenting his own life. Eventually he crashed, binging on junk food, skipping workouts, abandoning all his rules. Why? Because he built a system that suffocated him instead of empowering him. The Stoics never preached punishment. Seneca advised finding balance, warning against extremes. Even Epictetus, who believed in discipline as a path to freedom, understood that life is a marathon, not a sprint. If your discipline makes you miserable, you are doing it wrong. Instead of treating discipline as a ruthless dictator, treat it like a wise mentor. Make it work for you, not against you. If your habits feel unbearable, adjust them. If your system makes you hate your life, redesign it. The goal is not to create a rigid prison. The goal is to build a structure that makes success inevitable without crushing your soul. So don't mistake discipline for punishment. Use it as a tool to take back control, because real discipline doesn't destroy you, it frees you. Number 8, listen to yourself. Stop running in the wrong direction. They told you to never give up, to push through no matter what, to grind until you succeed. And like a good soldier, you obeyed. You kept charging forward, head down, ignoring every sign that maybe, just maybe, you were heading straight into a brick wall. But here's a thought. What if the problem isn't your effort? What if the problem is that you're sprinting in the wrong direction? You've seen it before. A man knee-deep in a failing business, throwing more money into a sinking ship because quitting is for losers. A woman forcing herself to write a book she secretly despises because winners finish what they start. A corporate worker grinding through 70-hour weeks in a job that makes him miserable, thinking, one day it'll all pay off. Here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes quitting is the smartest thing you can do. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, didn't waste his days clinging to failing strategies. He believed in seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. And the reality is, if you've been pouring your soul into something for years with zero progress, no passion, and no meaningful reward, maybe it's time to stop digging. Take Greg, a 45-year-old who spent a decade trying to launch a startup. He burned through his savings, worked himself to exhaustion, and convinced himself that the breakthrough is just around the corner. But deep down, he hated the work. He had no fire for it. He was staying in the fight not because he loved it, but because he was too ashamed to walk away. The moment he let go, he felt relief, not failure, but freedom. He redirected his energy into something he actually cared about, something that didn't feel like self-inflicted torture. And guess what? He thrived. Because success isn't about mindless persistence, it's about wise persistence. The world doesn't reward suffering, it rewards results. If all you're collecting are losses and exhaustion, ask yourself, are you being determined or just stubborn? The Stoics never preached blind struggle. They believed in pursuing what aligns with your nature, your strengths, your purpose, your values. If something is killing your soul, it's not noble to endure it, it's foolish. Seneca once said, if a man does not know to which port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. So ask yourself, are you fighting for something that actually matters? Or are you just afraid of admitting that it's time to change course? Because there's no glory in marching bravely off a cliff. Number 9, don't quit too soon. The price of greatness is endurance. There's a difference between mindless persistence and true resilience. Quitting the wrong path is wisdom, but giving up on what truly matters is the fastest way to a life of regret. Because here's the truth, anything worth having demands suffering. The only question is it suffering you're willing to endure? If anyone understood this, it was J.K. Rowling. Today, she's a billionaire author, the mind behind Harry Potter, a story that shaped generations. But rewind a few decades and you'd see a very different picture. A single mother, broke, living off government aid, writing in cafes because she couldn't afford to heat her apartment. She sent her manuscript to publisher after publisher, 12 rejections. They told her the book was too long, too slow, not marketable. Most people would have stopped. Most people would have taken the hint. Maybe this just isn't meant to be. But Rowling didn't stop, not because she was blindly stubborn, but because she knew, deep in her bones, that this was her path. She loved storytelling. She believed in the world she created, and she was willing to suffer for it. After countless rejections, Bloomsbury finally took a chance on her. The rest is history. The lesson? You don't quit on something just because it's hard. You quit when it no longer calls to you. Rowling wasn't chasing a trend. She wasn't stubbornly clinging to an idea she had outgrown. She was doing what she loved, and she was willing to endure failure, rejection, and uncertainty to see it through. This is what separates those who succeed from those who don't. Not talent, not luck, but the ability to withstand pain long enough to reach the other side. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Most people give up too soon, not because their dreams are impossible, but because they are unwilling to push through the suffering that comes with them. So before you walk away from something, ask yourself, is this truly not for me? Or am I just afraid of how hard it will be? Because pain is the price of greatness, and only those willing to pay it will ever reach it. Number 10, time is your most valuable asset, and you're spending it like loose change. Imagine someone hands you $86,400 every morning. No strings attached. You can spend it however you want. Invest it, waste it, use it wisely, or throw it away. But here's the catch. At midnight, whatever you didn't use disappears forever. No savings, no rollover, just gone. Now imagine doing something ridiculous. You start giving away chunks of it to people who don't value it. You let scammers convince you to buy pointless things. You throw thousands into the fire of procrastination, scroll yourself into oblivion, binge watch an entire season of a show you don't even like. And when the clock hits midnight, you realize You have nothing to show for it. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly how you treat your time. Every single day you are given 86,400 seconds, and most people spend them like reckless idiots, trading them for cheap distractions, pointless arguments, meaningless routines. And unlike money, you don't get a second chance to earn it back. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men alive, said it best: "I can buy anything I want except time." The man has billions at his disposal, yet he would give it all just to get a few more years. And yet people with decades ahead of them waste their time as if they have an infinite supply. Seneca warned about this over 2,000 years ago. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And that was long before social media, endless entertainment, and the black hole of distractions we have today. If he could see how people burn through their days now, he'd probably write a sequel called How to Be a Slave to Your Own Stupidity. So let me ask you, if you treated your time like your bank account, would you still spend it the way you do? Would you hand hours of your life to meaningless gossip? Would you donate days to procrastination? Would you invest months into a job you despise, pretending you'll figure it out later, as if you have an unlimited supply of later? If time was a currency, most people would be bankrupt. You can make more money, you can rebuild your career, you can repair relationships, but you will never, ever get back the time you've already wasted. The clock is ticking. The balance resets at midnight. The only question is, what will you do with what's left? Number 11, be proactive, not reactive. Design your life or be a slave to it. Most people live like a plastic bag in the wind, tossed around by circumstances, drifting from one obligation to the next, reacting to whatever life throws at them. They don't steer their own ship. They just hold on and hope for the best. And then, years later, they wake up and wonder, how the hell did I end up here? You see it everywhere. People stuck in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, routines they never consciously chose. They blame bad luck, bad timing, bad bosses. They believe life happens to them as if they have no say in the matter. But here's the truth no one likes to hear. If you don't actively design your life, someone else will do it for you. And trust me, if the world designs your life, it will not be in your best interest. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire yet still understood the importance of personal agency, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He knew that control isn't about what happens to you, but about how you shape your response to it. Take Nathan, a 46-year-old corporate lawyer who spent decades reacting. He took the job because it paid well. He worked late nights because his firm expected it. He let his schedule be dictated by emails, meetings, and emergencies that weren't even his. He thought he was successful until he realized he had built a life that felt like a prison. One day, after yet another 14-hour workday, he asked himself, if I died tomorrow, is this how I would have wanted to spend my time? The answer was a gut-wrenching no. So he made a decision not to quit immediately, not to run away, but to start designing his own life piece by piece. He set strict working hours. He carved out time for what mattered: his health, his family, his real passions. He stopped reacting to demands and started making decisions based on his own terms. And slowly, the cage he had built around himself disappeared. This is what most people never do. They let obligations pile up, let distractions dictate their days, let other people decide what their time is worth. They exist, but they don't choose. You can let life drag you around like a puppet, or you can take the strings back into your own hands. The difference between those who thrive and those who merely survive isn't luck, intelligence, or talent. It's the ability to stop reacting and start creating. You are the architect of your life. So ask yourself, are you building what you want, or are you just living in someone else's blueprint? If the answer terrifies you, good. That means it's time to wake up. Closing. No more waiting, no more excuses, no more handing over your time, your energy, your existence to things that don't matter. If you don't take control of your life, someone else will. The system will mold you into another cog in its machine. Distractions will drain you. Fear will paralyze you. The world doesn't care about your dreams. It only cares about what you choose to become. Every second you waste today is a second stolen from the life you could have had. Every excuse you make is a nail in the coffin of your potential. Regret doesn't hit all at once. It builds slowly, day by day, in every missed opportunity, every abandoned goal, every quiet moment where you realize you've been letting life happen to you instead of taking control. Take the risk, but make it calculated. You don't need to tear everything down overnight, but you need to start right now. One action, one decision, one step toward the life you actually want. Because waiting won't save you. Action will. Master yourself or remain a slave. Freedom isn't about doing whatever you feel like. It's about having full control over your choices, your mind, your future. The weak let their emotions dictate their lives. The strong enforce discipline and shape their own destiny. Which one are you? This is Victory Stoic, the mindset of those who refuse to waste their lives. If this message hits you, like, share, and subscribe. And comment below, I take full control of my life. The choice is yours. Start now.